that are starting to rebuild, reset, getting the res off so they can play together, attention focus on the man outside, but it's the people in the building that you need to be worried about. Drop down connection. Lufa tried to go for a hell of a play, but he's been slain. Mela replying back with a shotty as well. Good for two, Blank. Could have made that uncomfortable.
Mate, Mela has been an absolute firecracker of a player so far. Some unbelievable plays coming through. You know, as soon as he starts tapping that trigger at the speed at which he does and starts quick flicking towards these players, it could be a 1v3 no matter the situation. But luckily for Reject to get out of there with 3 players left alive, an ideal scenario, but pretty good all things considered. NBE taking a lot of damage to Enigma Galaxy, 2 teams that really do not want to go out early here. In the meantime, Reject looking to stamp their ticket through to the last chance stage. What a nade over the top there. Luckily, Sarah just about lives it, knows he has to move away. Duello's down, 1 player remaining now for Reject.
This is all crumbling. It's all falling to pieces quite quickly. The dream for the Japanese side that they'd be able to revitalize themselves in the last 2 games of the day, be able to show up when it matters most, is quickly falling away from them. But maybe a window of opportunity, timing and attention taking off of them as you've got DX roaming in, putting the pressure on the aggravating squad that has been fighting from the top of the hill, giving Rejects at least a moment to breathe. But it's just Sarah. It's just one man with a big set of guns inside and outside of the lobby as he starts to scuttle his way around the shelf, looking for a peek up onto DX. Meanwhile, Freak aggresses downhill, puts the shots into MBEs and keeps the pressure on them, Blank. Sek as well taking damage. MBEs are going to expire quite quickly if this keeps up, and we're getting closer and closer to deciding who takes the chicken dinner here on Miramar.
Huge chicken dinner required here for Enigma Galaxy to keep themselves in the running going forward. And Freak finds the last player coming through from MBE and Akaze. Coops looks down towards Sarah, drops a Molotov, will reposition him, and Lamborghini would have spotted him if it wasn't for Lord, who makes it up towards 12 eliminations. DX, the only thing standing between them and a 25-point game now. Only 1 nade, 1 Molotov, a whole bunch of utility on the side of DX, and it would be a miracle run now for Enigma Galaxy to finish this one out with the chicken dinner in tow.
Now don't forget DX's nades. They are so damn good, and this is why. They've got so many of them to use. Their comms for the timing on double nades is normally pretty picture perfect, and right now they are blowing Lord to pieces with it. You've got a nice knockoff onto Freak, looking to aggress the close on the damage done to Lord already. The shotgun's pulled out. Coops, he goes down for keeps, as that one's going to be DX snatching away the chicken dinner and securing themselves the opening win here on Miramar.
I mean, DX Xavier has been a team that we've not talked about too often, but they have just been really good today. Honestly, the amount of times we see them in the top 5 is sort of flabbergasting, honestly. I've been really impressed with this team, and that's coming from a guy that didn't really enjoy their playstyle back in the day about a year ago, and I think that quite comfortably I can say this is a very strong team, if not one of the strongest teams, that has a great chance to get towards the PMGC Grand Finals after this. I mean, some of their control has been marvelous, and like you said, those nades are just picture perfect.
Well, one of the things that always seems to ring true with DX is exactly that, just how well they use their utility, Blank. They're never really caught off guard in a position where, you know, they're low ammunition. It always feels like they're so stocked on rounds, so stocked on utility that they need, and they use it smartly. It's not a matter of, you know, we get to the final circle, all of a sudden they throw all their smoke saying, we've got to use our nades. They use them calculated, they use them efficiently. Offensive utility is used to open up fights or close down fights. They're not just thrown carelessly into the wind. We get the stats highlight here as well off the back of the chicken dinner for DX, and fair play to him. You know, I completely agree with you. I think that's a deserved win, and one of those where it shows that DX do have a lot of talent. We're seeing more of it now, especially as the day's gone on, Blank. It feels like they're looking more like themselves.
Yeah, it's a strong like 3.6k damage game on that one, and everyone's doing fairly similar damage across the board from DX Xavier, so no one's really slacking, no one's really dragging their feet either. I think for DX Xavier, it's just been wonderful to watch them during this entire tournament.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. It's been fun to see the level of lethality that they have been pulling out. That was an explosive game of Miramar, though. So whilst me and Blank clean up the dust with our little dust pans, let's head back over to a nice clean desk with Jason Kaplan.
Well, you have to get that dustpan from me because I've been using it here on the desk to keep it squeaky clean as Xavier keeping that match squeaky clean themselves, getting themselves even further up in the leaderboards. And obviously we can talk a lot about Xavier here, but the fact is they're a team that's already now solidified into the last chance qualifier kicking off in just 2 days of time. I think our focus is maybe more towards a team like Enigma Galaxy, Maxman.
Yep, exactly. They needed to get himself a big game here, Jason, if they wanted to push themselves up into a top 16 position, which this game is exactly what they did. Because, guess what? They did not lose a player in the first 2 minutes of this match, so instantly that's going to increase your odds of being able to get a good game on board. And I think, Kalash, when you're looking at this game, we have positions like what FaZe were doing, maybe a little bit too split, making himself very vulnerable to Enigma Galaxy to then take what I think was possibly a game-winning position. So Enigma Galaxy saw an opportunity, saw a weakness in their armor, and struck right where they needed to.
Yeah, FaZe really was not warm in this game at all. You might have had the circle come your way, you might have had a decent position, but you needed to regroup earlier. You needed to be taking decisions a bit more speedy with that regrouping, and that never occurred. So other teams around it exploited them, like as you said, Enigma Galaxy. But Xavier shows in this lobby that you don't always have to be playing center. They could play edge, they can be able to sweep it. I don't think they've been the most flashy team across these 2 days of gameplay, but they've certainly secured themselves a spot in that last chance qualifier. And as Blank says, they have a great shot at getting to the finals.
Yeah, Xavier clearly are a team that now look at that first place. They just overtook Mad Bulls and Influence Rage throughout today. So really strong performance from these guys. And one thing that stands out to me for Xavier is they are really good at reading the circle, in my opinion. They know how teams drop. They know how teams rotate and respond to specific circles, specific scenarios. And off the back of that, they can get the path of least resistance in every one of these situations where they can reach the late game. And if they have a good situation later on down the line, they can gun for those wins, as we just witnessed here on this Miramar. So sure, as you said, Kalaris, not flashy, sure, but they are getting consistent points to be able to compete for that first place.
Well, then let me throw this your way, Kalaris. Xavier in first place. Are they a first place team?
Out of all of this, no, because Influence Range is the first place team. They've played 6 games, and all of the teams around them have played 11, and they're still in third place. So I'm going to stick with the Brazilians for now, Jason.
Well, that's the point I'm getting at, is that Xavier, yes, they're currently sitting in first place, albeit having 5 more matches than Influence Rage. But the fact is, for me, this isn't a team that's going to be a CCT. This isn't a team right now that's going to win the Global Championship Grand Finals in Turkey. And what the question is, what do they need to do to improve to potentially take home that trophy, or what can they do to take home the trophy?
Kind of what I was saying before about them not being the flashiest of teams. Sometimes when you want to be a CCT, you got to be a bit flashy, right? You got to go out and get those 15, 16, 17, 18 limb chicken dinners. And right now, I mean, this has been so far their biggest game when it comes to across these 2 days, but their previous victory, 6 limbs, right? Like, they know how to, as Max said, get to those circles, but they're not, you know, bombastic. They're not just blasting everything out of control. They're just, you know, easing in.
Paragon is clearly, for me, the top frag of the team. He's been doing really good for himself, getting strong angles for the team. I just think when you put the entirety of Xavier in a 4v4 against other squads, I would see other squads possibly come out on top more consistently than the Xavier would, right? For example, I think Mad Bulls have really good fragging power in their team. I think Influence Rage, especially, I mean, when they're going to start coming in, I think they're going to be competing for that first place. So I think that would be the aspect of the gameplay where they could improve on, which is tough to do in such a small amount of time. But when it comes to macro and the overall rotational game plan, it's hard to beat right now. I would say they have some of the best in the lobby when it comes to reaching these late game situations.
Okay, well, obviously we talked, you know, a little bit about the top of the table, but the bottom of the table is something I'm kind of worried about. We've already talked about Quest, who have 1 match left, currently sitting in 22nd place. But Melise, they're in 19th place with 11 matches done. If Melise want to have any sort of chance of holding on into tomorrow, they have to have an explosive final match here, but honestly, I'm not really seeing it. And then I'm even looking further up the leaderboard. The next, Alter Ego, 10th place, 43 points. I'm not quite confident 43 points is going to be enough to keep you out of the bottom 8. But we'll see and find out. We're going to be heading to the final match here for Group Green. So we're going to send it back to our casters of Jackie and Blake.
Oh man, one last game to decide it all for today then, Blank. And we'll know how things are looking before the last day of the survival stage. It's been a great day of it, and I'm hoping that the last Miramar will deliver, because that one was already quite tasty.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. I mean, having that many teams in one of our final circles is just not something you see very often at all. So I'm excited to see what they can do over in this match. I think there's a lot of teams here who are really just fighting for their tournament lives, right? And I think that's one thing that is very evident from a lot of the playstyle. You can see Reject get themselves hyped up once again because they have done fairly well, right? 59 points over 11 matches with the start they had as well, Jackie. I think that that's a fairly admirable result because I think today they've really brought it back to favor. Prestige Evos as well. Loving to see the performance coming through from these guys. I worried that they just didn't have the elimination power, but currently they're at 32, just 1 point behind Reject. I think that they're doing well for themselves. And it's just been overall a great day to watch some PUBG Mobile. You Alliance, in fact, even really doing very well in terms of the numbers. I think they have a very good grasp on the game, and at least they're planning, right? And I think this feels like a team that's going to go into tomorrow hitting the same kind of numbers, because we did have this big trend of some teams that didn't do so well in their day one in Group Green who suddenly have turned it on for day two after making some quick adjustments on the fly, and some teams who just really gave it their all in day one and have succeeded because of it. I think you have to take those chances sometimes, and Alliance has certainly done that.
I think Alliance have done a great job of it, yeah, man. Like, for coming out looking like potentially they were struggling a little bit into the first game, not quite being as lethal. The longer the day's gone on, the better it's looked, and just going from strength to strength, even potential, for the clutch that we've been bringing up a few times, where if maybe there was a little bit more self-confidence into just instantly going for the aggression off the back of the team fight with the other two teams, there could have been a timeline where you get another chicken dinner from that as well. But they weren't worried about the past. They weren't dwelling on the ifs and buts. They played some great games following that, and it's led us to this position where they're in a pretty damn good spot, and the lobby standings are getting shaken up an awful lot. Puts us in a good position. Let's have a look at what we're dealing with then as we go into the last Miramar.
Killer playing path, to be honest with you, down towards the south side for our final match for Group Green today. I think that this is not going to be one that a lot of teams are very happy about at all. For the Gladiators, who really did have their big step up towards the start of the day, they haven't done too much after that point. It doesn't set themselves up very nicely, and now they're forced to move away from the Cobardia. Luckily, they're quite used to playing down towards the south side of Los Leones, so should be able to work with this one just a little bit, but this does put so many teams close together in the very early stages of the game, so I'm imagining we are going to see maybe one or two teams take quite the heavy hit early on here, Jackie.
Yeah, surely there's got to be some early commotion kicking off here.
Just locking everyone in down towards that south side as well, mate. That is cruel.
Yeah, this is ooh, I don't know, man. This is not the sort of circle you'd be too happy with if you'd whipped your protractor out for that one. Okay, so yeah, I think the point being there, definitely a lot of room for carnage on this one. Quite a different game already in terms of the opening moments, at least, with the way that it's shaping up. The posturing from the teams is going to result in, like you're saying, people being on top of each other quite early. So a lot of room for infighting, a lot of room for teams to lose out in a battle of attrition quite early on this one.
Yeah, N-Hyper desperately to get some points on the board as well, because they keep coming into contact with teams early on in the game. A spray down from Star could be bad, but we've got the Rocky Rage Roaders over here who managed to get that party bus as high as I've ever seen it in the air. That's some serious airtime they got on that bad boy. Very cool cinematic moment to start off our game of the day. But yeah, I think the difficulty with this circle is that, because we're locking so many teams down towards Los Leones on this south side, the circle, the playing path being so far down towards the south as well, teams are concerned with getting into Los Leones early. Just in case this does end up being an urban finish, you want to be one of the first teams to get towards that central arena. You want to be able to hold out those central buildings too, so teams aren't as willing to go far out towards that north side because they know they're going to have to come back down again fairly shortly on the next circle. It's tough. It's going to make it so we have less loot in the pool overall, less grenades, less utility to use, more rotations, honestly just trash looting overall. So I'm scared for a lot of these teams, and teams that desperately need points at the end of the day. This is not the circle or playing path that they wanted to see.
No, yeah, definitely. Definitely not probably on the wish list for a lot of our teams today for the final game, right? This was, I guess if there's the bingo card, this was the one-off you were hoping you wouldn't hit. But it's come up, and it's what we're dealing with. So we'll see what we get out of it and what plays are made. Having a look as well for some of our teams down towards the bottom end of things, just thinking about what we've seen from them today. Honestly, I think now with the way that it's kind of shaping up and how it's been established over the course of the day, it does feel a lot more representative of what we've seen. Melise really haven't had the greatest day of it, down in 19th place there, probably sealing the fact that you really haven't accumulated more than enough points that you'd need over the 2 play days for them. Inco as well, always room to get a little bit further up. You'd hope to see the Brazilian side get a bit of a move on. Here they're just taking damage, not what you want if you're a fan of the region, but I'm sure Influence Rage will be doing more than enough to fly the flag once they come back into rotation tomorrow.
And honestly, Influence Rage just had such a significant day yesterday, which with the way they were playing, I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. Fully on board with Kalaris there saying that, you know, that is the first place team, and I don't really think there's anyone else that's going to take away that first place spot away from them, considering, you know, DXavier, Mad Bulls, 90 points, 93 points at the end of the day. Last day for them to accumulate points as well, with Influence Rage being, what was it, I think 77 points into their points total overall. They're not far behind of what is 2 days of play occurring in just 1 day for Influence Rage. Enigma Galaxy, that was a really, really good result from that last match. And it was a strong performance as well, with a lot of eliminations found for themselves, despite that they're still in 16th place with 28 points. So even with a big game like that, when Enigma Galaxy's still got to toil away at these points totals and get the pickaxe out and start hitting these amazing veins full of elimination points and placement points total, because their job's not done yet. And although that was a strong game for them, it's one of the only strong games we've seen from them today. But again, I think for a lot of teams, they're in real difficulty hours for themselves. And again, all we can do is just watch how this map plays out, how these teams make their maneuvers, what players want to do with this one. Are they going to send this as hard as they can? Or are they going to try go for something a little bit more consistent? Certain teams don't have that luxurious choice. Melise Esports, they've just got to really take it to the max level. They've got to pull out the bandana, tie it around the back of the forehead, and go full Rambo in this game.
Giving it to the maximum is kind of the only opportunity you really have. I think playing timid, playing your cards close to your chest this late, when you know how bad it's gone with the overall point score, you've got to take a different approach. You've got to kind of turn up the ante a little bit, get a bit more aggressive, take more risks that potentially you otherwise wouldn't go for, and play for those picks, pay for eliminations, because there's room for it. I mean, if you're talking about Influence Rage as well, those 77 points, keep in mind, they only had the 1 chicken dinner over the course of that entire time, right? The rest of it was all elims. It was all just big games where they were constantly padding stats, constantly finding more and more opportunities to play off the back of the gun skill and build themselves a point score because of that. That's what you need to do. And we've seen prospects like that from a few of our teams today. Gladiators have looked a lot more lethal. They've looked like they're willing to take fights. Mad Bulls have been roaming a lot more. They had some big point scoring games in terms of their elims today, comboed with the 3 wins that we've seen over the course of the whole affair. But definitely a lot more room for Carnage, I think, at this point. Playing safe is going to win you no fans this late.
Sometimes you need that support from the backline as well, honestly, to really rev yourself up into these matches. For Gladiators, I'd agree with you. They look a lot more lethal coming into these matches, and I think the big thing, the big change at least for them, is this much faster gameplay, much faster rotational style, which does lead them to be making a fair few more mistakes, but it also leads to more variance in terms of getting those big matches. Before, they didn't really have a hope in hell of getting more than like 4 eliminations or maybe 1 or 2 placement points, which they realized is just not enough. And I think this year has been a year for them of just trying to perfect this new playstyle of heading center, getting these faster rotations working, and we saw it do fairly decently over in their region in particular. But they admitted themselves that it's a new playstyle for them. It's one that they're not super comfortable with just yet. Next year, likely, it's going to have a much bigger benefit for them. But they know they need to bring that playstyle out here in the final day of their group green in the survival stage to ensure they're able to get as many points as possible. They realize that they don't want to leave this up to chance like they did last year and just get pushed out in those final moments. Circle does move over towards that eastern side. Mad Bull's fairly happy with this one as they're holding over towards Puerto Paraíso. Quest moved up towards that northwest side and Los Leones as opposed to holding on that eastern coast. You can kind of respect the decision, but it has sort of shunted them out of play.
That's been synonymous with their brand over the course of the day as well, which has been unfortunate. It feels that they haven't really had too many opportunities to play the game out to the best of their abilities. Always very unlucky in some of the positioning.